What is going on, everybody? After all the recent updates and lore releases in Valorant, we finally have enough content to make a complete video on the lore behind the Mirrorverse. If you don't know much about Valorant's lore, this video is honestly a great place to start because it does somewhat lay a foundation for the rest of the lore story, as a lot of what's going on in the story of the game does relate back to this overall concept. You might have heard the phrases Alpha Earth and Omega Earth and been like, what the heck does that even mean? Some might think it's just a division created by Riot as an event for the players, and while that is true, the real story behind it is a complex and interesting one. This video does have chapters because there is a lot to cover, so feel free to rewatch or skip to certain parts that you want to learn about, or better yet, just watch the whole video. In order to understand basically anything in this video, we need to understand one major fact first. In Valorant's lore, there are two parallel universes. One universe, which we commonly refer to as Alpha, is our main universe, where the majority of the lore and storyline takes place in. Most of the maps that we also play on take place on Alpha Earth, which I'll get to later. The second universe, which is a mirror of the first universe, is known as Omega, which is where Omega Earth comes from. Both of these universes are identical in many ways, but not 100%. Before I go any further, I know a lot of you guys have been asking, and it is a pretty common issue, but how can you play Valorant with less ping and less lagging? Well, the answer to that question is this app called Gear Up Booster. If you're suffering from high ping or constant lagging, Gear Up Booster optimizes your connection, so if you're playing on, let's say, 100 ping, you can bring that down to 50. You are able to switch servers as well, and one of the most important features of Gear Up Booster is its ability to give you a stable network connection. No more jumping from 20 ping to 80 to 300 then down to 50 and dealing with all that nonsense anymore. Gear Up Booster ensures that your ping stays at the lowest and does not spike. My ping used to spike from 16 to 30 and then up to 80 sometimes, and now that I use Gear Up Booster, I do have a more stable ping sitting down at 16, and I honestly have no complaints. It works great. It's incredibly easy to use, there's no setup necessary, it's just one click and it starts running, and it is safe to use as well with a lot of major organizations partnering with them. Make sure to use the link down below in the description to download Gear Up Booster if you are someone who has issues with high ping, latency problems, or an unstable internet connection. Gear Up Booster will help you out to make your games more enjoyable, more playable, and of course to help you rank up. Alright, back to the video. Going back to the First Light event many years ago, which was the Supercharged Radiant event that took place, Alpha Earth and Omega Earth experienced this event in drastically different ways. On Alpha Earth, the First Light event caused a worldwide blackout. Some areas of the world, such as Phoenix's hometown in the UK, went into a lockdown, and from the event emerged Radiants, individuals with supernatural powers. Additionally, this event resulted in the discovery of Radianite, which is a powerful substance that scientists on Alpha Earth use to advance their technology, weapons, and even grant power in some cases. On the other hand, the First Light event also impacted Omega Earth, but they had the complete opposite experience. The climate collapsed, breathing became difficult, basic human needs for survival like food and water diminished, and the people on Omega Earth had to figure out ways to save humanity. One of the ways they accomplished this was through massive geodomes, which had regulated air, water, temperature, and food sources. And just like Alpha Earth, Radianite was also discovered on Omega Earth, and instead of using it to advance the world and grow, they're using it to power these geodomes and survive in their dying planet. This geodome that I'm referring to can be seen on the map Pearl, which actually takes place inside of one. And in the episode 5 Dimension cinematic, we can see Valorant Protocol agents trying to uncover what Omega Earth is up to, because at the time they believe that they are building some sort of weapon, only to find out that they're actually working on a life support system, which then opened the doors to introduce the map Pearl. Okay, now that we've covered the two universes and their existence, let's talk about why it's called the Mirrorverse. As I mentioned earlier, while these two universes are different in many ways, they are also identical in other ways. On Alpha Earth, after the First Light event occurred and Radiance came into existence, a secret organization was created to protect people against threats involving Radianite and the First Light. This organization is known as the Valorant Protocol, which recruits both humans and Radiants to serve in the team. And of course, these are the agents that you play every time you play Valorant. On Omega Earth, the same individuals are also part of an organization as well, known as the Valorant Legion. It consists of the exact same agents with the same names and identical characteristics and appearance. However, their mission is different. The Valorant Legion is mostly known for infiltrating and attacking Alpha Earth, mainly for one resource, Radianite. They teleport from their world into Alpha Earth, plant a device known as the Spike, and when that detonates, all the radionite in the radius of the explosion is taken and transferred to Omega Earth. This relates back to the core game mode of the game itself, with attackers playing as Valorant Legion agents from Omega Earth planting the Spike, and defenders playing as the Valorant Protocol defusing the Spike to stop the radionite from being stolen. The very first time that we got confirmation of the Mirrorverse being canon was in the Duality cinematic. In the cinematic, we are on Alpha Earth with agents from the Valorant Protocol trying to defuse the Spike. And that's when Phoenix comes across an enemy who looks exactly like him. Caught off guard, Phoenix froze up and he was saved by Viper before they defused the Spike and went back to their base, with Phoenix asking Viper why they look like them and why they want their radionite. Viper responded with, "I'll talk with Brimstone, it's time we filled you in," indicating that the leadership of the Valorant Protocol on Alpha Earth were aware of the second universe with identical agents. Now, after that cinematic, every following cinematic and previous cinematic made a little bit more sense. Agents that were involved in planning the Spike and trying to detonate it are Valorant Legion agents from Omega Earth, whereas those who are trying to stop it are Alpha Earth agents. If we go back even further to the Duelist cinematic, we get to see a fight between Jet and Phoenix, only to now learn that this Jet is actually Omega Jet from Valorant Legion. Omega Jet's actions actually reflected badly on Alpha Jet because at the time there wasn't any widespread awareness of this alternate universe, so no one knew it was actually her who detonated the Spike and caused the massive destruction to happen in Venice. And this incident that happened on Venice was a big deal. It caused a bunch of lives to be lost, many lost their homes, and many others were injured. If you haven't caught on yet, I'm trying to paint the same picture that Valorant developers have been painting since the launch of the game. The image that Alpha Earth are quote-unquote the good guys, and Omega Earth are the bad guys. Omega agents infiltrate Alpha Earth, they cause damage, destruction, all because they want to steal radionite. And this has worked. Over time, those of us who followed the lore even briefly got this idea that there is a good side and there is a bad side. Valorant even put in the description of the Dimension cinematic, "The good guys have arrived," clearly pushing for this narrative of good versus evil. But is there really a good side and a bad side? What if the side that we thought was good was actually the bad side all along? I'll get to that a bit later as we talk more about the two universes. So now we've covered the basic idea that Alpha and Omega Earth both have the same set of agents which exist with the same names and appearances. Aside from the Valorant Protocol and Valorant Legion, there are also other organizations which exist. On Alpha Earth, we have the organization known as Kingdom Corporation, whose main goals are money, growing their influence, and the control of radionite through security and special projects. A large portion of the agents on the Valorant Protocol do have some sort of connection with Kingdom Corporation, whether it be an issue, a connection, or even having worked with them directly in the past. Kingdom Corporation refines radionite and puts them into boxes that are colored green as we can see here, and they are often brought to scrutiny by the public due to their unethical practices such as Project Landfall and their experiment with radivores. On Omega Earth, the same organization exists there as well, except it's named Kingdom Industries. Just like on Alpha Earth, Kingdom Industries also has a wide grasp on companies and influence in their world, and the radionite that they refine are put into boxes which are colored orange this time. This color difference may be just so you can differentiate between the two worlds, but it also could signify the green radionite being stronger and the orange color being weaker. When Kingdom Industries was first introduced on a map fracture, we got to see clear differences between the two organizations, with the different colored boxes, and Kingdom Industries being a lot more secretive and protective by having multiple signs up to their employees saying not to mingle with Alpha Earth workers. I'll get back to Fracture in just a bit. Unlike Kingdom Corporation, Kingdom Industries actually works closely and openly with the Valorant Legion, oftentimes teaming up together. Additionally, there is also a third organization that works closely with Kingdom, which is Atlas. Atlas is a separate organization and it's not part of Kingdom Industries. They used to primarily do work on security, mostly related to interdimensional travel. But lately, we know that Atlas's endeavors have shifted. On Alpha Earth, there is no Atlas organization. So when the Valorant Protocol first infiltrated Omega Earth, they weren't even sure who these soldiers were that were attacking them, until Cypher later on revealed this through his investigation. We know that in recent developments, Atlas doesn't seem to be worried so much on security, but rather more invested into science and weapons to attack Alpha Earth, with their recent success at developing the Mega Spike, but failing to detonate it in Paris. And we know that the Atlas Squadron on Corrode, which developed and carried out this mission, is now being taken over by Omega Viper, so the three organizations are working closely together, whereas on Alpha Earth, the Valorant Protocol are mostly on their own. The last organization that we have yet to cover are the Scions of Hourglass. We know that the Scions are mostly a secretive and somewhat historical organization, with one of their main goals being keeping knowledge of Radianite a secret. Obviously, they have failed in doing so, but we have also learned from the map Abyss, which was one of their sanctuaries, that the Scions have harbored and murdered countless Radiants in the past before. This organization does exist on both Alpha and Omega Earth, with the last time that we officially saw or heard from them being the Reckoning cinematic, where Omen confronted and seemingly killed his old boss, as Omen was once employed as an assassin for the Scions. In the most recent cinematic, we actually got to see an hourglass on Omega Viper's bedside, a potential clue that we may be hearing back from them soon on Omega Earth. Alright, now that we have the basics down for all the organizations on Alpha and Omega Earth, let's talk about why they're in conflict to begin with. Before getting into this, let's go back to the map Fracture and a time when Alpha Earth and Omega Earth used to work together. On the map Fracture, both Kingdom Corporation from Alpha Earth and Kingdom Industries from Omega Earth collaborated on a project known as the Large Radiant Collider, or the LRC. This collider was built in a facility called the Everett-Linde, and its purpose was to advance the study of radianite particles, as well as potentially the study of radianite exposure and biome acceleration. For Alpha Earth, this was a great way for Kingdom Corporation to advance their science and progress with their technology, whereas for Kingdom Industries, this was an opportunity for them to advance their ability and life support systems, and potentially find alternative energy sources to help their world survive. Although that bit about Omega Earth is not 100% canon and somewhat theorized, it does make a lot of sense. Unfortunately for both sides, this collider was ultimately destroyed due to Alpha Chamber working together with Omega Chamber to sabotage the project, causing a massive explosion and destroying not only the facility but killing many scientists as well. It's also a good time to note that Alpha Chamber and Omega Chamber are the only two agents that actually work together and like each other versus the other agents who don't. The destruction of the collider also split Fracture in half, where one side we get to see the environment with life and plants and greenery, and the other side completely dusty, barren, and lifeless. A visual representation of what each Earth looks like, one being healthy and flourishing, with the other dying and apocalyptic. Now let's go back to the Valorant Legion from Omega Earth. We know that they attack Alpha Earth and plant spikes to steal their Radianite and take it back to their world. But why do they do this? As mentioned earlier, Omega Earth is dying, the people are dying, and humanity is going through a crisis. One of the only ways they can survive is through the geospheres, which can provide essential needs. But in order to provide enough power for these geospheres to keep running, Omega Earth needs Radianite. And this is a resource that Omega Earth is lacking in. They simply don't have enough Radianite to survive for a long time. So what do? They attack Alpha Earth and steal their Radianite to help their people. In some ways, yes, they are definitely bad, especially with the Duelist cinematic and Omega Jet causing the disaster in Venice to occur, which resulted in countless lives lost. We also saw recently that Omega Viper was expecting Atlas to succeed in their mission of detonating the Mega Spike at the First Light Expo, an event which had thousands of civilians gathered, and if it were to detonate, it could have caused a catastrophic amount of lives to be lost as well. On the other hand, we know why Valorant Legion is stealing the Radianite. They want to save their people and they want to save their world. On Pearl, you can actually find comic book covers showing that the Alpha Earth agents are viewed as a threat and that the Omega Earth agents are seen as heroes. They even have statues of Omen, Jet, Phoenix, and Sage. And they really are heroes in their world. All of these agents put their own lives at risk to save civilians from disaster, with Sage putting up her wall to stop a massive tsunami wave, Phoenix providing heat and lighting the way, Omen teleporting people in and out of floods to save them from drowning, and Jet using her strong winds to blow the waves away. All of these heroic efforts are water-based, and I believe that it tells the story of what happened before the map Pearl came to be, as whatever disaster that struck in this area resulted in tsunamis and floods to occur, as these agents stepped in and saved many people. And it doesn't stop there. In the recent Why We Fight Back cinematic, we got an even deeper look into what life was like on Omega Earth. Omega Sage is unresponsive and currently being held in this chamber, and without her, several agents on Omega Earth have died, with the agent Chamber himself being the most recent person to be critically injured. We have flashbacks of what life was like for them, Breaches building prosthetic legs for children who lost limbs, and we can see them living in a wasteland with no vegetation and dangerous storms. Yoru trying his best to save children from another disaster and looking heartbroken as he sees their mother reaching out for them, knowing that there's nothing he can do. And we even got to see Alpha Sova blinding Omega Sova in the eye. Everything we saw in this recent cinematic completely changed the narrative and shifted our beliefs. Maybe Omega Earth aren't the bad guys. Maybe this whole time it was Alpha Earth. Alpha Earth knows about the situation on Omega Earth. Killjoy already revealed that they're building geospheres and using radianite for powering life support systems, and not weapons as they initially thought. Even Neon questions if they really are the good guys. And what makes everything worse is that the Valorant protocol on Alpha Earth have actually struck back on Omega Earth. They've attacked back in order to steal the radianite that was already stolen from them. And this ties to the maps Pearl, Lotus, and Corrode. These are the 3 maps that take place on Omega Earth. Pearl and Lotus being the 2 where the Valorant protocol have attacked, and this time they were the ones detonating the spike to steal back their radianite. So in the game, when you play on these maps, the attackers are no longer Omega Earth agents, but instead you're playing as Alpha Earth agents and the defenders are Omega Earth. At this point, who exactly are the good guys? Because it seems like neither side is really good. Omega Earth does seem to be in a situation where they have no choice but to attack Alpha Earth for its resources, but going as far as causing mass casualty events of innocent people is a far stretch to take, especially if it's avoidable. And Alpha Earth, knowing that Omega Earth is going through the hardship with their dying planet and desperate need for resources, is being really petty by attacking back and stealing the already stolen radianite. Sure, they have the right to defend themselves, but going back into their world to attack them and steal your radianite back when you don't even need it, and you know that what you're taking back will probably save lives on their planet, it just doesn't seem right. And before we say why don't they just work together to help each other, we also know that the Valorant Legion on Omega Earth is not simply attacking Alpha Earth solely for radianite, they're also doing it for vengeance. As payback for what Alpha Sova did to Omega Sova with his eye, payback for Alpha agents killing several of Omega agents, as well as critically injuring Chamber, who we recently learned is in a canon relationship with Viper on Omega Earth. So it's not as simple as it seems, and the story between the 2 worlds go far deeper than what we know. And there is also a third and possibly many more universes out there. I don't want to get too deep into this, but KO is from an alternate timeline in a world where it plunged into chaos due to a radiant war occurring. It's not confirmed whether this timeline was from Alpha or Omega Earth, so we can assume that he's from a completely different universe, meaning that there's more than 2 universes with identical Earths and agents. This image here, which is on the map Pearl, showcases a timeline of events in a museum, also depict that Atlas has the capability to travel across the multiverse. So not just Alpha and Omega, but beyond that. So the doors are wide open for any other universes to make its way into Valorant's lore story in the future. And with that, we can pretty much wrap up the summary of the war between Alpha and Omega. I hope you guys were able to follow along. There was a lot of information and it feels like I basically summarized the entire lore of Valorant, but there is way more than just this video. Let me know in the comment section what you guys think about this division and which side would you take if you had to choose. Don't forget to drop a like if you enjoyed the video and make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss out on future lore and update videos. As always, thanks for watching and I'll see you all in the next one.